YouTube, what is going on? Chris with Jeranos Comics, and I'm coming straight off of the Rise of Skywalker. Man, have I waited 2 long years to make this video, so fair warning. Spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. We'll see how in-depth of the movie that I get, but if you have not seen the movie yet, please pause this, put it on your watch later, whatever, come back to this because I will be speaking on some very important things that happen in this movie, and it will give everything away. As I just went on a rant on Facebook talking about people really waited 42 years to see what happens at the end of this movie. So for us to not give fair warning and to spoil it for folks is always it's not a good thing. So, but you've been warned. This is a spoiler video, and let me just start out by man, oh man. Coming off The Last Jedi, a lot of you that know my channel and, you know, even people that aren't necessarily subscribed to me or watching me, my most popular video that I did was my Last Jedi review. And it was a negative review. I was like so many others who had issues with The Last Jedi, and I've said this many times. My issues didn't lean into this hysteria of conspiracy and politics and all this. To me, it was ego. It was Rian Johnson's ego, bad plot, bad character development that didn't really relate to the 7 films that came before, right? And the rest is history. We've all been sitting here for 2 years, so let's talk about what is relevant right now, and that is the Rise of Skywalker. Guys, let me just say that I came out of that movie like you should come out of a Star Wars film. I felt that way after The Force Awakens, and after The Last Jedi, I came out of that movie like not knowing what to feel. I was numb. I was confused. I was numb. I was essentially heartbroken. I felt the heartbrokenness like the next day, right? So I come out of this movie, I got emotional. I came out of it with a smile, and I really, really enjoyed what I watched. So let's go into some details. Now, I really love how, at least from my perspective, I felt J.J. Abrams slapped Rian Johnson in the face in so many ways throughout this movie, but most importantly was what JJ did with the first 15 minutes of this film, which I believe really kind of got us caught up. He approached many of the, not necessarily the plot holes, but like where we left off at the end of The Force Awakens and where we got at the end of The Last Jedi, with so many questions unanswered and so many things missing. I felt like JJ really took like the first 15 minutes of that film to kind of piece a lot of things together. So moving on from that, we saw a lot play out that probably should have been played out in the second film. We had a lot of stuff answered right away in terms of the Emperor and what his role was. Even on the opening scroll, you know, we learned that the fact that the Emperor was either alive or still there, maybe as a Sith ghost or in some form or way, his voice was being heard, and they knew, everyone in the galaxy knew that his presence was there, and kind of that he was working the strings behind the scene. So I love what JJ and crew was able to do with Carrie Fisher's footage. It was tough watching it for 2 reasons. One, because it's heartbreaking to know that she was gone, and 2, because you know that you kind of wanted more. I mean, you could tell. I believe they probably did a stand-in where they would show old footage of Carrie saying like a quick line or something, and they would create dialogue with Rey or the other characters with probably a stand-in where they're filming. You could see the back of Princess Leia's head and like Rey or somebody speaking to them. So they were very creative with that, but I was kind of left like, man, it should be so much more, you know. But unfortunately, that's nobody's fault because Carrie passed away. So I thought they did a great job kind of allowing Carrie Fisher's dialogue to jumpstart the mission that Rey, Poe, and Finn went on, right? So I'm not gonna play out the whole movie. I mean, we get into the thick of it where Rey and Kylo are once again having this relation. Kylo is still tapping in, and trying to communicate with her and pull her over to take his hand to the dark side. And all along, Kylo is now plotting against the Emperor. And what we find out, I thought this was great, a great job of what JJ did in terms of rewriting the ship from Ryan. Now, I don't know what JJ had planned for an episode 8 and what his plans with Snoke was at that point. But we did learn, and I had this theory, we learned basically that Snoke was a clone. Because we saw when Kylo was speaking to the Emperor that, the Emperor basically told him that Snoke all along was just a crony working for me. And we saw in what looked to be a cloning pod a whole bunch of Snokes that were like Snoke heads and stuff. So my theory, not much more was explained beyond that, but my theory is that maybe Snoke, or the experiment of the multiple clonings of this character Snoke, was using Anakin's blood mixed with the Emperor's blood. Because we learn at the end of this movie what the Skywalker and the Palpatine bloodline do together, right? I'll get into that in a minute, but I think it might have been very interesting if Palpatine was fusing those bloods into a clone to even suck the life force out of it, because you wonder why Snoke was always like sucked up and kind of unhealthy looking. But we know that Snoke had the power of a Sith Lord, so shooting lightning, so he could have definitely been at least a clone of used from Palpatine's blood or whatnot. So I thought that was very interesting because it showed, like, we were built up to believe Snoke was this huge, big, important character. Rian Johnson killed him off, and it ended up working out. So, hey, now, like I said, I don't know how much of that was planned. I think just JJ went back and said, okay, this is what Rian Johnson did. How do we make that work and make it fit without it being, oh, shock value, Snoke was just killed off and ha ha ha. Because watching this movie, it really shows me that JJ Abrams, and please, for all my viewers, I'm not saying that this movie was perfect. I could discuss some holes, which I will get into, but JJ understands Star Wars. He understands that this is a saga, that there's this many movies before and this many chapters before. How do we make it all work together? And I thought that's what he did with providing a close to the arc of Snoke. So, moving on from that, we are still trying to find out who Rey is, right? And I think JJ did this purposefully, because Rian Johnson made Kylo tell Rey that her parents were nobodies, when we think that they're either, they're like Skywalkers, or they're, who knows, somebody important, right? She's from a lineage of somebody, of someone that's important. Kylo tells Rey in this movie that I never lied to you. I said they were nobody because they were supposed to be nobody, or what. He made it play to where it was like they were keeping her safe by saying that, or keeping her in her feelings, or whatever it was, to keep her trained to want to, like, give him her hand. So it was all part of this plan. It makes sense, because obviously we find out in this movie that her parents were somebody. So, moving along. Let me talk about some things that I may have, I don't know if I want to call them issues, but there were times in this movie where I was a little, okay, let's get on with this. It was a little slow. And the dialogue was a little cheesy. But here's the thing with that. I think some of the cheesy dialogue and parts where it was slow, or maybe just, I wasn't completely settled with, was a a product of the fact that we had JJ, Ryan, and JJ again, and we had kind of this dilemma, right, going into this film. I think JJ did the best he could do with what was given to him. So I think some of these dry spots were almost unavoidable, because how do you make it completely cohesive? And I think some of the dialogue that JJ implemented was to actually tend to a lot of the fandom that was like divided and that was like upset at how Rian Johnson handled it. Certain, like in the final battle scene, we get cheesy like one-liners from Finn, or when Lando was with Chewie in the Millennium Falcon, and it's a little overdone. It's that hype, in that moment, that kind of hype when they're like winning the battle or whatnot. But these are things that are very reminiscent of the original movies, and hey, there should be no Star Wars fan that can't sit and admit that there was amazing cheesiness in those original movies, and that's what made them great, though, at the same time, right? So I'm not mad about that. Another thing that I want to touch on that JJ did, but here's the thing, I'm going to speak on this, and those who actually really loved what Ryan did might argue with me about this being a negative thing, but Ryan did the same thing, and that's making these films mirror the original trilogy. So let's go fast forward to the end, where we have a big final battle going on, and Rey faces Palpatine, and once again, what do we have? Palpatine, strike me down, and you're gonna become you're gonna take the Sith throne, right? And then he opens up the ceiling, and we see her friends up there fighting and losing to the the Sith army. What did he do with Luke in Return of the Jedi? Where he sees his friends out there losing the battle, and he wants. It's like, choose your friends, or strike me down and become more powerful than I've ever been, right? So much of a carbon copy. But again, I'm not mad at that, because the way everything played out and the storyline behind it was indeed different. Now, also, the similarities aren't necessarily unbelievable carbon copies, because you got to keep in mind, it's still Emperor Palpatine, and he's still using the same manipulative strategy to turn Rey, right? I mean, it's the same thing that needs to happen. So we can't get mad that he's kind of trying to play out the same role to become more powerful, or the same steps to become more powerful than he was currently, right? So essentially it all made sense, and it was all extremely believable. Now, with that being said, there was some other similarities through the film that kind of mirrored the movies before, but Rian Johnson did the same thing. For example, Rey going in and doing the training, very Empire Strikes Back, right? He took a lot from Empire Strikes Back. Rey seeing the reflection in the mirror, where Luke saw Vader, himself, Vader, and seeing himself in Vader, and so forth, and things like that. There was definitely those similarities. So moving on from that, let's just talk about the big key thing that we've been wanting to know for the last 4 years. Who is Rey? And what does this all mean? And how does it end? How does this 42-year saga end? And I was extremely worried, even when I was like into the climax of the final battle and the final fight scene with Rey and Kylo and Palpatine. I'm like, okay, how is this going to end? We find out that what happened with Kylo wasn't cliche. Kylo redeemed himself, and he did it in a way that really touches on the essence of Star Wars, and the story of redemption, right? I think Star Wars is so much a story of redemption, and the way that they did this. And it's so funny, because I went with my wife, and when Kylo, basically Palpatine was taking the life force from both Kylo, Skywalker, and Rey, who we found out was a Palpatine, right? So there you go. She was the granddaughter of someone very important. Um, and he's being able to take the life force from both of them to regenerate, which again is why I said earlier why I think maybe he was trying to fuse Anakin's blood with his own blood to create Snoke clones. But anyways, we see him regenerate. He throws Kylo down, saying, "I'm gonna throw you down like Skywalker threw me down when Anakin and Vader threw him down a shaft." And then basically, Palpatine kills Rey by sucking all the life force out of her, and he comes back up. And at this point, when we saw the death of Leia and how he felt the death of Leia when getting hit with a lightsaber from Rey when he was fighting Rey out on the water, that was his one thread that he had to hold on to his humanity, to Ben, who Ben was. And I think at that point he felt responsible for killing his mother because she ended up giving all she had to let him feel her. And I have a theory too that in that moment, I think Leia knew what was going on between the fight between Rey and Kylo, and she knew that if she distracted Kylo, that Rey would hit him with a lightsaber, ultimately would kill him. And I think that was what ultimately killed her, because I think she fused her energy with Kylo at that point in time. And when Kylo got hit with a lightsaber, that's what really killed Leia. And I think she probably knew that it was going to allow him to face his humanity. And I think she may have knew that Rey was going to heal him. So that's definitely something to kind of talk about more and go into if you want to talk about some deeper theories. But when Rey healed him and he came out and we got to see Han Solo for one last time, which I thought was awesome. And he threw his lightsaber into the water and finally found his humanity again. Now, my wife was sitting next to me when Kylo comes back, climbs up, Rey's dead, and he's ultimately giving her his life force. She comes back and they kiss, and my wife's like, "Oh God," and I'm like, no, watch. Like, I knew where this was going. And then Kylo dies, and I was like, see, redemption. It's all about redemption. So we weren't supposed to, because she was like, he killed Han Solo. I'm never gonna like him, right? But it's about redemption, and we understand that he made that sacrifice. And I think Kylo knew that even if he killed Kylo, he had to make an ultimate sacrifice to ever be forgiven for killing his father. And what happened? He was able to go to become one with the Force and become a Force ghost. So he freed himself from the chains of the power of the dark side and the Sith, right? So I thought that was awesome. I thought it was awesome. It wasn't cheesy and corny where they kiss and they live happily ever after. No. This ain't no Disney princess movie, regardless of what you all think, right? Now, with Rey, the final scene with Rey going back to Tatooine and going to Luke's home and burying Anakin's lightsaber, the blue lightsaber, and Leia's lightsaber, which, to touch on, I'm so glad they had that little flashback scene with the CGI young Luke and Leia training, which took place after Return of the Jedi. So they brought context to Leia having training, which is another, I think, retcon slap in the face to Ryan, who just made Mary Poppins Super Jedi Leia. Like, how is she even doing that? She's never used the Force before. So we see training. And they also showed, this is, before I get into the last scene, I forgot, guys, this was very, very important. The Mary Sue argument. Let's put it to bed, okay? I know so many of you won't, but let's put this to bed. Rey was shown having weakness multiple times in this film. Multiple times. We saw that after the end of The Last Jedi and Luke died and went to the Force Ghost, Leia kept training her, and we saw her weaknesses and her flaws in her training. Also, we saw her weakness and her flaws when she was in that battle with the lightsaber battle with Kylo Ren, because before, how many lightsaber battles? There was at least one in the Force Awakens, right? Like the second time she picked up a lightsaber and she like beat him, but he was injured. And then it happened again in The Last Jedi, and then the Red Room scene where she's like a pro, right? Well, here we see her being vulnerable again, and I think if Leia didn't tap in and distract Kylo, I think Kylo would have defeated her, whatever that may look like, right? So I thought that was very awesome that JJ was conscious of kind of putting that Mary Sue, that argument and that anger around this character Rey. And also learning that she was a Palpatine truly does, like, I had a theory that she was like a clone of Anakin, which would explain why she was so powerful, right? Being a granddaughter of Palpatine shows why she would be so naturally powerful as well. But it's not an end all, because she still needed training. She still had weaknesses. But moving on from that, let's go to this final scene. So she's burying Luke, or Anakin's lightsaber, and Leia's lightsaber outside of his aunt and uncle's home where he grew up, right? And I just, the whole scene, her picking up this little piece of metal and like sliding down the dirt, like showing this playful innocence and just this whole energy and vibe around this scene. And then we get this individual walking by saying, haven't seen anyone here in ages. What's your name? And she was like, Rey. And she was like, Rey who? And then we see Leia and Luke is Force ghosts, and she says Rey Skywalker. And I got emotional, man. And I just thought it was we see the suns and then the Jedi music playing, and I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it. So to me, that was the perfect ending. It truly was. And I'm ecstatic right now. I'm sure there are so many haters still that just won't accept the goodness of what has transpired and what we in this lifetime are able to witness with this amazing 42-year saga that is Star Wars. And yes, Rian Johnson, personally, I do feel he did many things wrong, but we could still look at, when I went back and watched The Last Jedi again, there were still key elements in that movie that worked. I just wish that there was like 15 minutes of that screen time. I wish that 15 minutes of screen time was turned into more of like over an hour of it, diving deeper into those, like the Jedi texts and the training on the island with Luke, and why Luke was so bitter, and the backstory behind Luke and Kylo, and really explaining that, instead of going off on these silly journeys with new characters because you want to sell toys that don't even matter, and doing silly stuff for shock value, like cracking jokes when you shouldn't, throwing lightsabers that should be a meaningful moment, milking a space cow and spinning into a cup, silly stupid stuff. Even Mark Hamill said, you got time to film me milking a space cow, but not screen time. You got to cut out the 30 seconds that I sit and mourn the death of my best friend Han Solo. But there were those key elements in that movie that actually were special, that were needed to connect the dots through this whole saga, and JJ really pulled those out and was able to maneuver to an exit strategy that worked for me, at least. So guys, that's my review. Again, I'm extremely happy. I want to go see it again in the movie theater. Don't know if I will. I got my Knights of Ren cup out here. Still has soda in it, so I'm being really cautious around all my comic books. I put it on a backing board because it's dripping. But yeah, pretty. That's sweet, right? So J.J. Abrams, man, I appreciate you, and what you've done. I hope that this can really mend some broken bridges, and I just let me end by saying this. One of my friends made a post the other day stating that stating to why The Last Jedi as a standalone film wouldn't have been bad. And I get that. I mean, it was visually spectacular, and there was some good stuff, right, in that film. And I think there was like the whole story of them going to Canto Bight and whatnot. I mean, that could have worked. In all these added characters could have worked in a standalone film outside of this long saga of multiple films, right? But again, Rian Johnson's ego just got in the way of it, and that's why I feel that it left a bad taste. But again, redemption. I'm so happy, guys. Let me know what you guys thought. If you've seen the movie, leave some comments. I want to have this discussion with you all. Be kind and respectful. I don't want this to be, this ain't what my channel. I'm not here like some of those other people to sit and get clicks and viewers by perpetuating divisive hate, bullying, and rage. I will never allow that on my channel. So if you have an opinion that's different than mine, I will respect it and express it respectfully, but do not attack anyone, and do not attack me. And if you either attack me or anyone else in my comments, I will most likely delete your comments if you are being hateful. If you disagree with me, I will leave them up. And I want to get into those conversations because I absolutely love different perspectives and different points of view. So guys, I'm so excited. I hope you all have a good weekend. I hope you all have a good Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever it is you celebrate. Be safe. Have a good and safe Happy New Year as well. Do not drink and drive. There is Uber. There is Lyft. There are taxis. Call a friend, whatever it may be. All right, guys. Until next time.